here is something that almost nobody talks about. When Diana, Princess of Wales, died in 1997, she left behind not just grief and memory. She left behind a carefully constructed legal document that would, decades later, send some of her most personal jewels across an ocean. Her will and an accompanying letter of wishes contained one very specific instruction: that all of her jewellery be held for her sons, William and Harry, so that, and I want you to hear this clearly, their wives may, in due course, have it or use it. Diana wrote that herself. She planned for this. And yet, when those jewels began appearing on Meghan's wrist in California, on American television, on red carpets, during a globally watched interview that shook the monarchy to its foundations, the palace watched in what can only be described as a very deliberate silence. Today, we are going to follow those jewels. We are going to trace exactly which pieces made the journey from Kensington Palace to Montecito, how they got there, and why, despite every ounce of institutional pressure, there is absolutely nothing the palace can legally do to bring them back. The legal foundation. Before we get to the jewels themselves, we need to understand something that most people simply do not know, and once you do, everything that follows will make perfect sense. Diana's last will and testament was signed in 1993 and modified in 1996. Unlike the wills of most senior royals, which are customarily sealed, Diana's was released to the public in 1998. Her estate was valued at roughly £17 to £21 million after tax, the bulk of it coming from her divorce settlement from Charles. Her sons, William and Harry, were named the primary beneficiaries. Assets were to be held in trust until they each reached the age of 25, later varied by the courts to 30. But here is where it gets truly interesting. The day after she signed her will, Diana wrote what is known as a letter of wishes. It was informal, just one page, but its contents were read into the court record at the 2002 Old Bailey trial of her butler, Paul Burrell. The Bishop of London read it aloud, and what Diana wrote was this: "I would like you to divide my personal chattels at your discretion between my sons and godchildren, but I would like you to allocate all my jewellery to the share to be held by my sons, so that their wives may, in due course, have it or use it. All of it, every piece, for their wives." Now, this letter of wishes was not a binding legal instrument on its own, but it obligated the executors to consider and implement its guidance. And the key point that estate lawyers have consistently confirmed is this: once Diana's jewellery passed through probate and into the hands of William and Harry, those pieces became their personal property. Not royal property, not crown property. Personal chattels governed by ordinary English law, no different legally speaking from a watch or a painting inherited by anyone else. Harry turned 30 in 2014. By that point, most of Diana's private jewellery had been formally divided between the brothers. And from that moment, Harry was entirely free to gift those pieces to his wife. What Meghan actually has and what she doesn't. Now, before we go piece by piece, I want to make one thing very clear, because this is where so much confusion lives. Not everything associated with Diana belongs to Diana's estate. Some of her most iconic pieces were never hers to give. The Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, perhaps the single most recognisable Diana headpiece in the public imagination, was a loan. Originally commissioned by Queen Mary in 1913, it was lent to Diana as Princess of Wales and returned to the royal vault after her divorce and death. It now appears regularly on Catherine at state banquets. It was never Diana's personal property, and it could never have passed to Harry or Meghan. Similarly, the grand sapphire suite that Diana wore at so many formal occasions, that was an official wedding gift from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, which means it belongs to the Crown, administered through the royal collection. Official gifts are not the personal property of the royal who receives them. And then there is the Spencer Tiara, which never belonged to Diana at all. It is a Spencer family heirloom, and it remains with her brother's family to this day. What Meghan has access to is something different entirely. She has the pieces Diana acquired after her separation and divorce, the jewels from Diana's most independent years. The pieces that tell a very different story than the early princess portraits. And that, I think, is not a coincidence. The aquamarine ring. Let's begin with the piece that made the world stop on the evening of May 19, 2018. As Meghan and Harry departed Windsor Castle in a vintage Jaguar E-Type for their evening wedding reception at Frogmore House, photographers caught a flash of something extraordinary on Meghan's right hand. A large emerald-cut aquamarine stone flanked by trapeze-cut diamonds set in yellow gold with a white gold mount. It was Diana's. This ring was created by Asprey in the mid-1990s, using a stone reportedly gifted to Diana by her close friend Lucia Flecha de Lima, believed to have been sourced from Brazil's Minas Gerais mines. Royal jewellery historians date its arrival in Diana's collection to around 1996. She wore it prominently at a fundraising gala in Sydney in October of that year, and again at a pre-auction party at Christie's in June 1997, just 2 months before she died. Diana wore this ring on her left hand in the years following her separation and divorce, sometimes stacked with a diamond band in place of her sapphire engagement ring. Historians and jewellery experts have long referred to it as her freedom ring, a symbol of her life after the marriage ended, of her autonomy, of who she was becoming. It was a private acquisition, not a crown loan, not a diplomatic gift, hers. And on her son's wedding night, it appeared on his bride's hand as her something blue. Multiple outlets reported it as a personal wedding gift from Harry, sourced from his mother's collection. And here is what I find deeply moving about that choice. Of all the pieces Harry could have offered Meghan on that day, he chose the one most associated with Diana's independence, her freedom, her new beginning. The diamond tennis bracelet and the ring it became. This one requires a moment because the story is more layered than most people realize. Diana was frequently photographed wearing a diamond-lined bracelet, what jewelers call a tennis bracelet, believed to be a Cartier piece acquired during her marriage. Royal jewelry specialists consistently treat it as part of her private collection, not a crown loan. When Harry designed Meghan's engagement ring in 2017, he turned to this bracelet. In his memoir, Spare, he describes asking the royal jeweller, who held several of his mother's pieces, to harvest the diamonds from one particularly beautiful bracelet of Mummy's and use those stones to create the ring. He asked William's permission first. William did not hesitate. Kensington Palace confirmed at the 2017 engagement announcement that 2 of the 3 stones in Meghan's ring came from Diana's personal collection. The centre stone is from Botswana, a place of deep personal significance to Harry and Meghan. But the 2 flanking diamonds on either side? Those came from Diana's bracelet. And here is the detail that stops me every time. The bracelet was not destroyed in the process. The remaining stones were reset, and Meghan has been photographed wearing what appears to be the intact bracelet on multiple occasions. Most significantly, and this is the moment that crystallized everything, Meghan wore that bracelet during the 2021 Oprah interview, filmed at a private home in Montecito, California, broadcast to a global audience of tens of millions. A representative for the Duchess confirmed that Meghan chose Diana's bracelet so that Harry's mother would be with them for the interview. Think about what that means. The stones that anchor Meghan's engagement ring, the physical symbol of her marriage, came from Diana's wrist. And the remaining bracelet sat on Meghan's wrist as she and Harry told the world why they had left. The gold butterfly earrings and bracelet. In the mid-1980s, Diana was photographed wearing a set of yellow gold butterfly motif jewellery, pavé diamond and bluestone stud earrings, and a coordinating gold bracelet during a 1986 visit to Canada and other engagements. These pieces are not listed in any royal collection catalogue. Historians treat them as private gifts or personal purchases. They are not associated with any crown suite. Meghan first wore the butterfly earrings and bracelet on October 16, 2018, the first day of the Sussexes' Australia tour, and just days after the announcement of her first pregnancy. Royal reporters immediately matched the pieces to Diana's 1980s photographs. Palace sources confirmed they came from Diana's collection, gifted by Harry to mark the pregnancy. The butterfly set has reappeared consistently since then, during the Oceania tour, at a Cirque du Soleil charity performance in London, at Meghan's SmartWorks clothing line launch in 2019, and at the NAACP Image Awards in Los Angeles in 2022. Given their modest size and the continuity of use across multiple years and multiple continents, these pieces have almost certainly simply travelled with Meghan as part of her personal jewellery. From royal tour in Australia to charitable work in California. There is something quietly beautiful about that, I think. Small gold butterflies, worn by a princess in the 1980s, now worn by her daughter-in-law at events celebrating women's empowerment in America. The gold Cartier Tank Française watch. Diana owned at least 2 Cartier Tank watches. One was a Tank Louis Cartier with a leather strap, reportedly a gift from her father, Earl Spencer. The other, and this is the one that matters for our story, was a gold Tank Française with a metal bracelet, which became one of her favourite day-to-evening timepieces in the 1990s. She wore it frequently in the years after her separation, often stacking it with gold bracelets. After Diana's death, the Tank Française passed to William. Harry, by his own account in Spare, was content with other mementos. The sapphire engagement ring went to William, who used it to propose to Catherine in 2010. But then something shifted. Both Vanity Fair and The Telegraph reported in 2020 that Meghan had been photographed wearing a gold Cartier Tank Française, believed to be Diana's, during a Fortune Most Powerful Women virtual summit and in a black and white portrait released ahead of a Time 100 appearance. Close comparison of the case shape, bracelet style and dial details supports the identification. Vanity Fair's account notes that the watch, previously owned by William, was later given to Harry, who then passed it to Meghan. So this piece made 2 symbolic journeys, from Diana's wrist to William's, and then from the future king to his brother's American wife. In law, it is a privately owned watch, gifted within a family. In royal iconography, it is one of Diana's most personal daily objects, now ticking quietly on a wrist in Montecito. The simple gold bangle. This one is less dramatic, but I think it matters precisely because of that. Alongside the butterfly earrings, Meghan's Australia tour outfits frequently featured a simple yellow gold bangle identified by royal reporters and fashion sites as another of Diana's bracelets. Diana wore a similar bangle at engagements in the early 1990s, including a 1990 visit to an East London hospice. Town and Country's survey of Meghan's Diana pieces treats this gold bangle as a distinct item, noting repeated wearings at London charity events, the SmartWorks launch, and later at the NAACP Image Awards in Los Angeles. It is not a spectacular piece. It does not have the drama of the aquamarine ring or the emotional weight of the tennis bracelet. But that, perhaps, is exactly the point. It is the kind of jewellery you wear every day, the kind you reach for without thinking, the kind that becomes part of you. The palace's position and why it doesn't hold. Now, you may be wondering, can the palace do anything about this? The short answer is no, and the longer answer is also no, but for reasons worth understanding. In 2019, tabloid stories circulated claiming that the Queen had banned Meghan from wearing certain pieces from the royal collection linked to Diana. Subsequent reporting in Vanity Fair, Elle and People pushed back firmly. Palace sources pointed out that Meghan had already been lent royal collection pieces, including her wedding tiara, and that all of the Diana pieces Meghan had worn to that point came from Diana's private collection, not the royal collection. A ban on royal collection loans is entirely within the palace's power, but it has no bearing whatsoever on privately inherited jewellery. Under ordinary English property and succession law, Diana's personal chattels passed through probate like any other private estate. Once William and Harry received their shares, those items became their personal assets. The palace has no formal legal claim over them. The Royal Collection Trust has no jurisdiction. There is no mechanism, none, by which the institution could compel Meghan to return a bracelet, a ring, or a watch. What the palace can do is control the narrative, and it does. By emphasizing Catherine's wearing of Diana's earlier, more Princess of the Realm pieces, the Lover's Knot tiara, the grand sapphire suites, palace-aligned commentators frame Catherine as the custodian of Diana's royal legacy, while Meghan's pieces are quietly characterized as belonging to Diana's post-divorce, more private chapter. But here is what I find so compelling about that framing. It is, in a way, entirely accurate, and it tells us something profound. William chose the sapphire ring, the ring of the marriage, the ring of the institution. Harry gravitated toward the aquamarine, the tennis bracelet, the butterfly set, the daily watch. The pieces of Diana's freedom, her independence, her life after. Diana's estate planning, however imperfectly honored in some respects, achieved its primary goal. It gave her sons assets, financial and jeweled, that could later underwrite divergent adult lives. One son stayed within the institution and deploys her jewels in service of monarchy. The other left and deploys them in service of a different story. The clasps now fastened in California, the diamonds harvested from a bracelet to anchor a new beginning, the watch ticking through Zoom calls in Montecito. These are not stolen treasures. They are not contraband. They are, in the precise language of the probate court, personal chattels validly inherited and freely disposed of. Diana wrote the instruction herself. For their wives, and I keep coming back to that. A woman who spent years navigating an institution that did not always protect her, who found her freedom in the years before her death, who chose an aquamarine ring as her symbol of independence. She made sure in writing that her jewellery would go to the women her sons loved. Whether she could have imagined this particular outcome, we will never know. But the jewels are exactly where she said they should be. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 pieces do you find most significant, and do you think Diana would have approved of how they've been used? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely read every single one. If this kind of deep dive into royal history and the stories behind the jewels is what you love, please give this video a like. It truly helps more people find this channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join us. There are so many more stories waiting in the vault.